Hello, everyone. Today we are going to discuss literature review, and we are going to discuss how can we actually make our literature review more systematic. Because most of the time, people actually go through the literature review, which is a very haphazard manner, and they don't really actually keep the record of the literature as such. Even if they take the annotations in the literature, they don't tend to actually find those annotations later on, and we need to do a lot of effort in finding out the paper which they want to actually cite in their literature review or the study. So let's actually quickly go through the basic points of discussion that we'll be actually discussing in this video. The first one is the searching of the literature. The second one is going through the literature. This going through the literature means that what important points you should be actually looking out for in any of the research paper or article. And the third one is adopting the systematic way for literature. And this is the one which actually helps you in putting everything in a very systematic manner, so that you should be able to find out while writing the research paper, or like writing the literature review later on. So in one of the videos in which we actually discussed the identification of the area. We actually discussed this Venn diagram, and we said at that time that ask yourself three questions: that is, what, why, and where. And what is basically and why actually they actually come, and where, all three of them, they actually become the exact area or the title on which you actually want to work. So for the further details, you can actually watch that video. For the time being, what we're going to do is we're going to actually further explore this Venn diagram. So if we actually look at this, this particular intersection over here, this particular intersection, this is basically your A intersection B. So if we actually call this A, and we call this B, and we call this C, so this area is basically your A intersection B. And if our what is organizational cultures, and we want to work on the organizational cultures, and we want to see the effect of organizational cultures on entrepreneurial orientation. And this entrepreneurial orientation is our why. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually write the phrase in the search bar as organizational culture and entrepreneurial orientation. So as usual, what I generally do is I choose Google Scholar because it gives me a larger number of libraries. Otherwise, it is highly recommended that you also go and search for the digital libraries of different journals with this phrase, organizational culture and entrepreneurial orientation, so that you can actually find it on the web. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually look into this organizational culture. Oops. And entrepreneurial orientation. All right, here we go. Oh, let's actually search it as. That's pretty. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually search for the latest papers. I hope it's going to give us plenty of papers. Now, we can actually see that these papers over here, and we can see that there are different papers which are actually discussing the entrepreneurial orientation on Bangladeshi SME performance, role of organizational cultures, and we want to see this entrepreneurial orientation, organizational performance, then organizational performance and entrepreneurial orientation, right? So what you can do is you can actually download or maybe look out for these papers on these journals or these libraries, digital libraries of these journals, and then you can actually start going through the paper. As a sample, what I've done is I have actually already downloaded this paper, and I have this Mendeley desktop software in which I have got multiple papers. Um, this software actually gives you a very good, a very good view of the paper. You can actually download the paper, you can go through the paper, and you can also, highlight the stuff in it, and you can take the annotations and the notes over here. Like I've done over just right over here, right? So let's suppose if I want to have, if I think if there is anything important over here, I can actually highlight it, and then I can also take the notes. So any note taken can be converted into the summary, right? So if this note, we can see that we have already taken this note, right? So we can convert it into the general notes or the summary of the paper later on, right? So what I recommend to you to do is to actually go through this paper primarily. Um, Go through the abstract, which is very important, so that you should know that what is inside the paper. Go through the introduction, because within the introduction, uh, it's the introduction of the whole paper and the gap, as well as the problem that all has been identified within this introduction in most of the papers, in most of the articles. Specifically, the last two paragraphs are very important, because these paragraphs actually give you the whole problem or the gap that the authors have actually really worked on. Then primarily, if you do not have any idea about entrepreneurial orientation or the related theories, it is highly recommended that you go through the whole literature review and find out that what is actually the author talking about. This is going to give you the complete concept of the theory. For example, if it's entrepreneurial orientation, this theory is going to, this literature review is actually going to tell you about what entrepreneurial orientation is. Then if you don't have any idea about the organizational cultures and different types of the organizational cultures, it is highly recommended that you go through the literature. And secondly, the literature review and theoretical framework, they generally are, most of the articles, they are actually combined under the same heading. So you need to actually go through the hypotheses that the authors have developed, right? As you go on, as you have actually gained experience, and you understand the topic completely, you don't need to go through the literature review as such. All you need to go through is the number of the hypotheses which are there, or the theoretical framework, which might be actually given below over here like this. This theoretical framework, or the model or the research model, is actually going to give you the basic idea that what the authors have actually done, because already you know what are different four types of organizational cultures. You have completely grasped the concept of these different types of organizational cultures, and you also have an idea about entrepreneurial orientation or maybe entrepreneurial leadership style. So you don't need to go through the whole literature review, but just the hypotheses, and then you need to actually see whether um, uh, you know uh, how these hypotheses are actually connected to each other, or how this model is actually connected to each other within this model, right? So then the next thing that you want to actually see is within this paper is, for the time being, forget about the mayas, forget about the demographics. If you want to see the testing of hypotheses, that is important, and you need to actually see the results, that which of the hypotheses were true and which of the hypotheses were not true, which will be actually summarized in the tables in most of the cases, in the articles like this, right? So then later on, what you need to actually see is the conclusion, and the most importantly, what you need to understand, and what you need to go through is actually the discussion. In most of the papers, you can actually see the heading of the discussions. In this paper, there is no heading of the discussions. But in most of the papers, if I show you, you will be able to find the discussion. So let's actually open this paper and see if we can actually find a discussion over here. Let me open first. So here we go. So let's actually come down um, and see the conclusions and the limitations and implications and mediation. They also do not have a separate heading for the discussions. But what we can do is we can search out for another paper. Let's see. Uh, Sometimes what happens is that the discussions and the conclusions, they have actually been combined. So you will probably not find a separate heading for the discussions, right? So this is managerial implications, and there we go. So these are the discussions. So go through the discussions specifically. So categorically, three sections, they actually count a lot, which actually summarize the whole paper that you are actually looking for. The first one is the abstract. The second one is the introduction, and the third one is the conclusion and discussion. So these three of, if you're putting the discussion and the conclusion separately, these are four different headings. These four headings actually are very important in any of the research. So I strongly recommend that you actually go through all these um, headings very thoroughly, so that you can quickly get an understanding that what is happening in the paper. If you find the paper very interesting, then you should actually specifically go for the literature review and the results of that paper as well. Once you're done with this, I strongly recommend that you keep on taking the annotations, and through the annotations, what you do is you develop a summary of the whole paper, right? Whatever there is there in that paper, right? So, like this, what you can do is um, what you are doing is you are actually preparing a literature review already for your study, right? So another thing, once you're done with this, all is done, fantastic, it is finished, right? But you have like 1046 documents in this, right? Once you have actually finished 1046 document, and you plan to include something in your literature, or you are planning to write up something, or even if you have gone through 30 papers or maybe 25 papers, and you plan to write something about your topic, and you want to actually identify that in that which result was mentioned in a specific paper. So it's going to become very difficult for you, right? So right now, what we need to do is we need to develop a strategy through which we can actually easily find out two or three very major things. Number one, the journal, the authors, the possible, the possible critical thinking or the notes that you have taken or the objectives. So what I recommend you to do is to actually develop an Excel sheet which should actually include important headings just like this. For example, if you want to actually go through this paper, the paper that we had recently actually opened like this, right? This paper, you keep the record of all these details. For example, including the details within the paper, what are actually given, what exactly the paper is all about. For example, the authors, the title, I missed the title. What you can do is you can actually go over here, copy, and simply paste this title, right? And you can actually wrap the text and expand it a little. All right. It was published in 2019, 11 volume for Business and Economic Review. The objectives of the study were this. Theories were in entrepreneurial orientation, organizational culture, and entrepreneurial leadership. So this is the summary that we had actually developed over here, right here. Okay, let me open this. And then the future work, which was actually mentioned in this paper, so that you should be able to see whether you are really concentrating within that gap or not. You can include multiple fields, including the hypotheses, including what were the mediators, what were the moderators, what other things were in the paper. And let me actually give a big review of that. This is one of the papers. This is one of the sheets which I developed later on. And hide everything. So this is your population and the respondent category, conclusion, result, framework, right? And you just keep on going, and the gap and the moderator, mediator, you just keep on going. And the type of the test, the Likert scale, methodology, and so on and so forth. You just keep on listing. But why I am insisting on this thing that you should keep on developing a sheet like this is because you will be able to, while you're doing your literature review, while you're writing your literature review, it would be very important that you actually identify the specific area, maybe the theories that you are working in. So if I actually select the theories, and if you actually select the sort on, which comes from the data and this filter, right? You filter the data over here and go through any of, let's suppose if I want to actually go through the shared leadership. So I'll deselect everything and look out for the articles which I have about the shared leadership. So it is actually going to give me the articles which I have actually gone through for the shared leadership, right? And it is actually going to give me the complete summary over here that what happened in that particular paper, right? So like this, what I can do is while I'm writing a literature review, and if I want to write something about, the shared leadership, I can actually go through and this small summary that I have already developed by doing my literature review and developed through, a particular this systematic way, I'll be able to do my literature and write my literature review more effectively, right? So this is one of the ways I can actually do the literature survey or literature review more effectively and systematically. So getting back to the points that we had actually seen before. We had to actually discuss searching for the literature review through the Venn diagram. I actually discussed it, and I hope it is understandable that how can we actually go through this literature review through the Venn diagram. If let's assume if I want to actually see the organizational culture and entrepreneurial orientation in SMEs, I can actually include the um, uh, this search phrase with organizational culture and entrepreneurial orientation in SMEs. So it is actually going to give me the results, more refined results, right? So I hope the searching of the literature review is clear. So we are done with this. Similarly, going through the literature, we have discussed that we have to go through 2 to 3 very important headings, which includes abstract, introduction, conclusion, and discussion, so that we should know that what is going on in the paper that we are reading. Um, so I believe that going through literature review is also, it's well understood. The third one is adopting systematic way for the literature review. Remember, in order to have a systematic way, you need to actually organize your literature as such. So whenever you are going through the literature, the softwares like Mendeley or maybe EndNote, they're going to help you out in maintaining the bibliography as such. If you want to have another tutorial on how to work in Mendeley, you can see my tutorial on Mendeley. desktop and how to actually organize your bibliography more effectively. But for now, I believe the adopting of systematic way for the literature review, which actually includes the development of an Excel sheet, which has all the details about the paper, that is also there. And what you can do is, while writing the research paper, you can actually quickly go through the specified areas that you want to address in your literature review by filtering them within an Excel sheet. So I believe that uh, adopting the systematic way of for literature review is also well understood. So if you have any queries, uh, please do let me know in the comments. Or what you can do is you can actually email me at cbkhan@outlook.com. Right. So this is my email address. You can actually take this email address and email me if you have any queries. Stay tuned to the channel for the more videos. I believe uh, this video was helpful. Till next time, bye bye.